Due Process awarded 9 Emmys, including the 2005 New York Emmy for Outstanding Crime Reporting Programming.
It's been touted as a non-lethal tool for police, but Amnesty International says it's led to more than 100 deaths, including the son of this Essex County lawyer. Her campaign now to lend support to other mothers who've lost their sons to police and to win a national ban on the taser. That story up next on Due Process.
Major funding for Due Process provided by the New Jersey State Bar Foundation, committed to educating the public about the law, and by the Fund for New Jersey, supporting informed citizens for an effective democracy. Additional funding provided by Lawyer's Diary and Manual and online legal reference, elaw.com.
A less lethal weapon in the hands of the police, a high-tech tool to replace, at times, the deadly gun. That has to be a good idea, or does it? I'm Raymond Brown, and on the docket for this edition of Due Process, the taser, a life-saving alternative or another deadly weapon. We'll get one answer from a company representative, quite another from the head of New Jersey's ACLU. But first, Sandy King with her view from the field.
Raymond, New Jersey is the only state in the country that bans tasers. And just as some police chiefs are saying it is time that ban was dropped, groups like Amnesty International and the ACLU are saying New Jersey has it right. Still, 8,000 agencies are using tasers, and in some U.S. cities, they've become more common than the nightstick. But only Hollywood would see the joke in 50,000 painful volts of paralyzing electricity.
We must dance! Oh!
A slapstick sight gag.
You shot my son! Halt!
A taser shot by an actor playing a cop.
50,000 volts of electricity are now passing into your skeletal muscle tissue. Your central nervous system has been incapacitated, but you will regain motor functions momentarily.
For a laugh.
Oh.
Let's talk about St. Mary's.
But for Vivian Sanks King, it's no joke. Police tasers, she believes, took her only son.
They felt threatened by him, according to their own words, and they felt the need to restrain him. And that's when they applied the tasers, which, of course, I didn't even know were used in the state of Florida.
And Amnesty International says Tony Sanks King was one of more than 100 people nationwide to be killed by police tasers.
Police officers in New Jersey are prohibited from using them.
But criminologist Wayne Fisher, a consultant to the Police Institute at Rutgers, reads the data in another way. Not how many have been killed by tasers, but how many lives may have been saved, he says, because police had the option of a taser instead of a gun, an option not available in New Jersey.
The point is to have a way of dealing with these situations that reduces the chance of serious injury. And I think tasers offer that opportunity. Police officer can remain 15 or 20 feet away and potentially end a dangerous, violent confrontation.
The M26 has been used to safely subdue emotionally disturbed persons, save suicidal subjects.
This is how it works. A 50,000 volt shock delivered through wires and a metal dart from as far as 21 feet away. It's designed to incapacitate temporarily while causing no lasting harm. But Sanks King, the one-time head of legal at the University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey, says it's not how it worked for her son. And as a result, she's now parent to her grandson, the child Tony had been raising.
And the fact that he's not here to talk to us today is proof that it is absolutely lethal.
Vivian got the shocking news of Tony's death in a phone call from her uncle. But it wasn't until she got to Florida that he told her it wasn't a car accident that had taken her only child.
And he said, no, it wasn't that kind of accident. He told me that my son had been stopped by the police. During an altercation, they applied a taser to him, and he died almost instantly. Needless to say, I was stunned, I was speechless.
And later, after meeting with officials from the sheriff's department,
they wanted to tell me that they had stopped my son for a routine traffic violation. They couldn't tell me the nature of the violation.
She got angry enough to sue police.
Witnesses, when this ultimately goes to trial, and it will testify that they applied the taser more than one time to his body.
And angry enough to campaign against taser use nationally. That at the same time that a Bergen County chief is lobbying to bring it back here in New Jersey.
Every tool possible that law enforcement can have to either save the lives of an officer or save the lives of the suspect is something that we should be able to have.
As police do in Florida and every state other than this one.
The statute that was passed in 1985 prohibits police officers in New Jersey from using either stun guns or tasers in the course of their duties.
You know, we've all seen it on TV, on cops or on the news, somebody being apprehended using the use of a taser. So I think it's another advancement in technology that we should be able to use in New Jersey, and hopefully someday will.
But even the taser company concedes there have been some deaths, but only, it's claimed, when there is some other underlying cause, like drug use or the kind of heart problem that showed up for the first time in the autopsy on Tony Sanks King.
Of course, we had no knowledge that he had an enlarged heart. And this is one of the reasons that tasers should not be used. They could not know, as we did not know, that he had an enlarged heart. And so it is probably, most assuredly, the application of the taser that caused his death.
With any weapon, there is some danger involved. Whether it's your hands, or it's a taser, or it's a gun, or it's a nightstick. There's going to be some type of danger involved in the use of that weapon.
And the Lodi chief is so convinced that the taser can save more lives than it takes, that he's willing to demonstrate its value to any legislator who cares to watch.
I would.
Have you tried it?
Not yet, no, but I will. If this is an option that we can get, I will be the first one to be tased.
All right.
Although even this taser promotional piece shows just how debilitating 50,000 volts can be.
I had no control of my hands grip whatsoever. My hands were like this, almost like going into a seizure.
It will be my policy that anybody who is going to carry it will be tasered so they can experience it. That's how much faith I have in the weapon.
But before any cop could legally carry a taser here, New Jersey's blanket stun gun ban would have to be changed, something Wayne Fisher says is long overdue.
We need to amend our statutes so police officers in New Jersey can take advantage of advances in technology, which are in use in other states.
But any call to bring taser use here will be just one side of the story.
Improve officer safety. Avoid litigation. Save lives.
With Vivian Sanks King determined to be heard on the other.
I say to those departments, think long and hard. What I really say is don't do it. Don't do it if you look at the increasing numbers of deaths that have resulted from tasers just since the death of my son in 2003, that there have to be other viable forms of restraint that can be used that will protect law enforcement officers, but that will not kill individuals that they are trying to restrain.
Vivian Sanks King has filed a $10 million lawsuit in a Florida court against the St. Johns County Sheriff and the officers who tasered her son. Also named the Taser Company for what the suit claims was the company's negligence in manufacturing the tasers, advertising them as non-lethal, and allegedly failing to adequately train the officers who used them on Louis Sanks King. Her case stands in stark contrast to the case of a mentally ill Boston man. His family insisted he could have been subdued by a stun gun instead of being shot and killed by police. After that case, Raymond, Massachusetts changed its law, leaving New Jersey as the last holdout.
And Sandy, we should disclose that Vivian Sanks-King is a friend of both of ours, and that I represented Vivian Sanks-King for a short time on an unrelated matter, not knowing that you had been working on this story for months before. But the taser debate goes beyond the case of Sanks-King and her son, as we'll see in just a minute, so stay with us.
Well, I think maybe it's better than regular guns, regular ammunition.
I don't like it. I think that's for animals.
If it's a life and death situation where someone is about to commit something dangerous and hurt someone else, I guess it's less dangerous than actually shooting someone.
But you stop somebody for a traffic infraction and tasing them because they didn't get out of the car right away.
It's probably safer than using the real one if you're just trying to intercept somebody.
If they cause great injury, then I'm against them.
People can get heart arrhythmias, and some people have died using them.
You know, if they've been on drugs, or it might have a more severe effect on someone like that than someone who isn't on drugs. But I would prefer they use that than guns.
I guess if it's going to do the job, I don't see why not. It's better than real bullets.
Why wouldn't we be in favor of a less lethal alternative to a police bullet? We'll put that question to Deborah Jacobs, Executive Director of the ACLU of New Jersey. And why would an organization like Amnesty International put tasers in its crosshairs? We'll put that one to Jay Kehoe, Eastern Regional Manager of Taser International. And what does a taser hit do to the human body? We'll get that from Professor Richard Servatius, a neuroscientist at the New Jersey School of Medicine, who's studying the effects of tasers with a grant from the National Institute of Justice. Welcome to all of you. Deborah, let me start with you. It is interesting to see the ACLU and Amnesty and other civil rights and human rights organizations critical of what looks like a less lethal alternative to the gun. We know what the gun can do. Why wouldn't you be in favor of something that suggests a technological de-escalation of violence?
I think there are really two issues. The first is, are tasers safe? And the second is, are they being used in a way that's fair and appropriate? With respect to safety, we've had over 100 deaths from people who have had tasers used on them. And in Great Britain, they wouldn't even approve taser use for general police because they were concerned about their safety. There have been a number of studies that bring that into question. So I think that really we need to see more studies done on their safety before we can draw conclusions about that.
So let me push your answers just a little bit. In terms of the issue of safety, you're waiting to see what further evidence shows. It isn't just the 100 incidents where people have said there was harm, or maybe the dozen or so suits. You think there needs to be more evidence before we go ahead?
I think that the 100 deaths are a clue that there is a very serious problem with them. It doesn't matter that those deaths might have related to pre-existing conditions like an expanded heart, because many people have pre-existing conditions, and we should be aware of that and not use technologies that are going to cause death when that is not intended.
So where we stand now is you favor a ban. You could be persuaded perhaps later. It
should be suspended until there is, in other states, in New Jersey, it is a ban, and we'll continue with that, I hope. But until there's further evidence, a Canadian study on pigs with pacemakers found that tasers could cause heart attacks. The FDA found that.
All right, let me just hold on and come to you, Jay.
One more reason, application. We found that they're being used discriminatorily.
Okay, I want to come back and explore the other issues. Let's first start with the basic question. There have been at least allegations of 100 deaths connected to tasers, and in addition to that, we've got litigation, about a dozen or so, in which people have gone into the court to allege a connection.
Yes.
That would seem to suggest there are dangers, and perhaps latent dangers, that a police officer, even one well-trained, couldn't perceive. How do you respond to that suggestion that these are not as safe as they might seem to be?
Well, first of all, the use of force in any law enforcement agency is a dangerous situation. We look at what the definition of a non-lethal weapon is, and we take our definition directly from the U.S. military non-lethal directorate, which is a device that in its design and application is a device that is used to minimize the chance of serious physical injury, death, or environmental damage. There is no use of force out there by law enforcement that is risk-free.
But isn't the taser implicitly an invitation to say, look, since this is an alternative to what we know to be a very dangerous instrumentality of the gun, it's something that you can use with a little less concern that you may end someone's life or cause serious bodily harm? Doesn't that require us to have a greater sense that it really is safer?
It is very, very much safer, and if you look at the over 120 medical studies that have been done on the taser, it cannot cause cardiac tissue damage. It cannot cause a person to go into ventricular fibrillation. It's the studies, and we continue to say, bring it on.
All right, the use of the word study is an invitation for our third guest, Richard Servatius, who's about to undertake a study. What's the state of science now? Is there some question about the safety of tasers? Why, after all, is the National Institute of Justice funding a study now when tasers are so widely in use elsewhere outside New Jersey?
Well, I believe that the National Institute of Justice is funding these studies because there's a worry about at one part that a lot of the taser company itself was funding the studies. Now, that's not a problem in and of itself because it's in the absolute absence of data. It's a matter of bringing in some objective people to look at what the effects are.
But we find ourselves in an interesting position, and 49 states have embraced their use. There is some sentiment in New Jersey, at least in law enforcement quarters, to use it. And that's at a time when there's an open question about both the long and short-term effects. Is that correct?
That's correct. However, more data is needed, so that it is both animal studies, which are being funded by NIJ, and human studies, which I'm involved with.
All right, let me take you back to my high school experience. I remember the scientific method. And in theory, you start with a hypothesis. Have you got a hypothesis with which you're starting about whether or not this is safe or dangerous, long-term or short?
Well, in terms of whether it's long-term or short-term, whether there is danger, I believe the data is going to tell us. So I'm not taking a position on what I think the tasers do because we gather data. At the same time, I have to be able to work with institutional review boards.
Are you going to be tasering people in your study?
Eventually, that's our hope.
Okay.
The best way of doing it is to have humans who are volunteers who will, for the sake of science, be tased or exposed to electromuscular.
But you're going to check them pretty thoroughly medically before you do that.
Absolutely.
Jay, have you been tasered?
26 times.
26 times. What's the experience? Because we saw in Sandy's report somebody who'd been tasered, and it looked like a not very pleasant experience.
It's extremely uncomfortable when that happens because what I'm doing with the taser is I'm actually simulating the same type of electrical energy that your body runs on and simply causing all of my large muscle groups in my extremities to contract. So it's like having a huge body cramp going on.
But I mean, the guy in that package, and you guys are familiar with that, says it felt like a seizure. That's pretty extreme feeling.
Yeah, but once again, when it's over, it's over. There's no after effect other than feeling.
Now, one of the issues that Deborah raises, we're going to come back to her, but she already hinted at it, is this training question. Is every police officer who's going to be armed with a taser going to be tasered, and are you advocating that as a part of the training program?
What we do is we recommend it. It's nothing that's a local policy decision on each police department.
Why don't you insist on it? It seems to me that if you're willing to, you've done it 26 times, presumably because you believe in it and you want to show people that. Why should not every officer experience this prior to being able to use it on another human being?
That's what we suggest, exactly that.
I'm playing with the word suggest, but playing in a serious way. Why not more than a suggestion?
Because we are the manufacturer of the device. We do not control the policy on how it's deployed, where it's put on the use of force continuum, or anything else. We give people ideas and suggestions, but it's the local police departments, the state agencies, or even as far as a statewide, guidelines for the use of a device. We don't set policy. That's up to the community. That's a community, something that we need.
Deborah, this is, go ahead.
That's why it's really irrelevant to talk about sort of Taser International's feelings about how safe or not it is, because they are manufacturing and selling these. And that is what the goal is to do, is to sell it. We are here concerned about whether lives are going to be cost and whether police practices are sensible around the use of tasers.
Before we even get to the lethality question, what is the perception of those in the civil liberties community about inflicting this degree of pain on a person who has not been convicted of anything, who's in the process, presumably, of apprehension or detention?
Well, tasers should be used as an alternative to lethal force, as an alternative to a gun, really.
I mean, some people have used the word torture. Let me throw it out, and indeed, our whole country is consumed with the debate about what are the means to use for a person who's not been convicted of anything.
I think that they're particularly troubling when they're used in chases to resolve arguments and things that where lethal force would not be the method chosen. They should be an alternative to lethal force, and they should be limited in that way. And I think with all technologies, technology has moved at the speed of light, but our laws protecting privacy and protecting people are still in the Stone Age in many ways. So we really need to see the police department develop carefully thought out policies. If this technology is found to be safe, then apply.
Let me ask Jay really quickly. Yes. Or do you agree that it should only be an alternative to lethal force? That is, where a police officer would otherwise want to use lethal?
In no way, shape, or form. We have 9,200 agencies currently using tasers in North America, and we're looking at over 86% of them put it at the same level of force as we use oleocapsule spray or pepper spray. At the same level. The idea is we're able to stop a situation when you have someone who is basically focusedly aggressive toward the police officer in a threatening manner, or in that way to stop the situation from escalating. Not
necessarily at a point where the officer would be justified in using lethal force.
Much sooner.
Let me come back to something you said earlier. Richard, is it clear that there are no long-term consequences? We tend to focus on those cases where there's an allegation that a death occurred because someone is medically vulnerable. What about the long-term prospects for people who are tasered who don't show any apparent immediate effects? Is that an open question? Is there some evidence on that?
Well, to my knowledge, it hasn't been thoroughly studied, but from anecdotal information, it doesn't appear to be long-term effects. So there is some vulnerability, possibly, that could interfere with safety. However, again, that's still an open question, but in terms of long-term consequences, we haven't seen any evidence of it. However, our study is designed to try to understand those.
Jay, do you concede that any deaths have resulted from taser use?
No, we have not had, no one's ever been killed by a taser. We concede that there have been about less than 20 incidents in the United States where the taser has been listed as a contributory cause, not as a cause of death, but as a contributory cause. But to give you an idea of the, first of all, electricity doesn't linger in the body. When it's over, it's over. The power of the taser is the equivalent of, if you take one Christmas tree light bulb, 4,000ths of the power from that one Christmas tree light bulb is what the actual power is. It's not the power, the electrical power of the taser that does its effect.
But let me ask you, Professor, could electricity cause lasting harm to an organ even though the electricity flows out the body?
It could, if there's cellular death, if there's other types of damage to the heart. However, the data on that has, when people have looked at damage in a pig's heart, they haven't seen long-term damage.
Deborah, let me ask you this question. It's unfair to ask you to be responsible for the other states in the union, but why would so many states have embraced this technology if, as you say, there are both questions of right and questions of medical harm still so open?
Well, there are many technologies put out there for law enforcement use, and many of them are positive and helpful and useful, and someday tasers might fall into that category, but we just don't know at this point. And I think that people rush to judgment on this technology, and we really don't have enough oversight of how technologies are applied in the use of police officers. So.
Jay?
May I just interject a little bit here, is that to give you an example of just last year in one community in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, they were able to document 19 people who they tasered. They would have had to shoot and kill. All right, those 19 people, I would say, would be able to say that, yes, this technology is worth it.
But you've not agreed to limit the use of tasers only to circumstances where lethal force would be
putting it back
justified.
in her court as far as putting it only for lethal force. But the bottom line is...
Why would the National Institute of Justice, which is not anti-law enforcement, but indeed out of the Justice Department, why would they be funding future studies if it was such a clear question that this was a safe technology? technology to use in less than lethal circumstances?
The same reason why they did the exact same type of study with pepper spray back in 1990, because of the allegations surrounding potential relations to deaths. I mean, just in California, they investigated 63 deaths that supposedly were caused by pepper spray back in the 1990s.
When we're winding down, Deborah, what's your best guess about New Jersey? Will there be a year from now police forces allowed to use tasers?
No.
Okay. We'll see, and we perhaps come back and look at this subject. But for now, our thanks to Jay Kehoe, to Professor Servatius, and to Deborah Jacobs. That's it for this edition of Due Process, but we'll be here next week with another cutting-edge issue of law and justice. Till then, for Sandy Kane, all of us here, I'm Raymond Brown. Thanks for watching.
There's the taser. But while some find it positively stunning, in New Jersey, it's off limits.
I had no control of my hands and grip whatsoever. My hands were like this, almost like going into a seizure.
The advanced Taser M26 was created to take away your control. Its impulses can infiltrate your neural network from a hit anywhere on the body, stopping even subjects under the influence of hyperstimulants, PCP, cocaine, or methamphetamines. The M26 has been used to safely subdue emotionally disturbed persons, save suicidal subjects, control combative intoxicating drivers, incapacitate dangerous subjects, safely end armed standoffs.
Major funding for Due Process provided by the New Jersey State Bar Foundation, committed to educating the public about the law, and by the Fund for New Jersey, supporting informed citizens for an effective democracy. Additional funding provided by Lawyer's Diary and Manual and online legal reference, elaw.com.